Good morning, Philippe. I see you joining us from Minsk with a coffee. Philippe just arrived this morning to Minsk from Belgium via Lithuania, yes?
Yeah, horrible trip. But coffee.
Morning.
Good morning, Dmitry. Good morning, but I not see you, but I see your name just.
You can't see me?
No, there is no pictures. There is only.
1 second.
To be visible, you have to push some start video or something like this. Yeah.
Okay, now.
Now I see it. Good morning.
Morning.
It's at 10 o'clock, and I suppose we will start our opening webinar conference, with which we would like to open the new business seasons 21-22. As you see, we still working offline, but mostly I think we will work. We'll continue to work online with our events. We plan also few. I apologize. May I ask you please to keep the microphone muted, because I have some. Oh la la. I have to cut myself then the microphone from our participant. Apologize. This is the inconvenience of the webinar by Zoom. I would like to then to start. Cannot mute some microphone. And yeah, ask to mute, yes. And then, okay, we will start our conference of today, and I'm very happy that Russian rating agency Aqua, with which we already organized a few live and online events in the past, agreed today to present to us the situation of the Russian economy, of Russian region, and generally of the situation with the business atmosphere in the Russian Federation. And I will pass the floor to Mr. Mikhail Sukhov, to the CEO of the Aqua rating agency, for the welcome word. Mikhail, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Oleg. Good morning to everybody. Thank you all for spending this morning with us. We're in the beginning of business season, and we're more than welcome to share with you our ideas to the most crucial trends of Russian business now. Our leading experts will discuss with you the issues of macroeconomics, the developments of our regions. You know, Russia is the country of regions. Maybe the bond market will attract your attention also. And speaking this year, nobody can skip the issue of green financing and ESG issues. So I will not cut your time spending with our analysts. I hope that this morning will bring you some new ideas about business with our country, and we're happy to share with you our opinion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mikhail, and especially also some important maybe to say that from July, Russian territory it's opened for Belgium and Luxembourg the tender of the business and touristic visa. Now you are practically free to come to Russia, except that on the way back, for example, to Belgium, you will be obliged to keep 8 days of quarantine. And I'm happy to pass the floor to Dmitry Kulikov, to the Director of Sovereign Rating and Forecasting Groups of the rating agency Aqua. Dmitry will talk to us about the recovery of the Russian economy after the pandemic. Please, Dmitry.
Thank you, Oleg. Thank you, Mikhail. Happy to see lots of faces, and I will briefly update you on what's happening in the Russian economy right now. I mean, in the macroeconomic sense. I believe all the questions will have a special time after all the presentations for the questions, and I'll be happy to answer them if there are any. Please, can I have a first page of the presentation? Thank you. So, economic activity in Russia. Well, basically, as you all know, the pandemic has put enormous pressures on the economic activity all over the world, and in Russia was not special in that sense. We have an obvious 1 year long recession. The recovery basically started 2 quarters after the pandemic started, and at the moment the economic activity recovered big time. At the moment, the economic activity measured by both real GDP, by unemployment, and other measures, other statistical measures, is higher than we had. Higher than the pre-pandemic level, higher than in 2019, but still we have some place to go towards the long-run trend of the economic growth, as you can see on the both on the left and the right graphs. I mean, I will just say 2 words about what this graph shows, right? The dashed line is a real potential GDP index, meaning that this is the GDP corrected for the prices dynamics, and the line which converges to the dashed line is the real GDP itself. And you can see that on the right graph, you can see that they're converging one to another, and our own estimate that this convergence will take another year probably, but again, most of the recovery already happened for Russian economy, at least. The next one, please. In terms of the long run, I mean, the growth perspectives in the long run for Russia. At the moment, our in-house estimate of the GDP growth potential, real GDP growth potential, is around 1.8 yearly. On the but we see there is a good chance for it to be higher somehow for the next couple of years. If the pension reform takes the intended effect, then the labor market will have somehow a bigger inflow, or I would say the less outflow, which is in the GDP sense, in the economic activity sense, which is good. In the social sense, it may be questionable, but anyway, these processes make us think that the GDP growth potential, starting from 2023, 2024, will be at least 0.4 points higher than it was before. On the graph itself, you can see our own decomposition of the average yearly real GDP growth in Russia, and you can see that more or less the GDP potential growth have been fluctuating around 2% for a very long time, and that's a structural thing for Russia. And there are possibilities for the fiscal policies and the structural policies to make this growth higher, but it's very difficult, basically. The next graph.
Dmitry, there is no sound from your side, Dmitry. I don't know what's happening with the microphone.
Okay,
Yeah,
and now, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, nice. So inflation, right? Inflation in Russia is kind of in a global trend of the global inflation. And this means that probably this inflation surge, this global inflation surge is mostly connected to the temporary mismatch between the supply and the demand on like most of the markets that you can think of. Basically, when we talk about inflation, it's very useful to think about different measures of inflation, because all of them they show a little bit like different things. For example, the traditional year-on-year basis for the inflation, as you may know, is obviously a very backward-looking measure. And like, for example, if we take August in Russia, the August statistics makes us think that the prices have been growing with a 6.6% pace, but in reality, on this graph, you can see that if we look at the monthly basis, month-on-month measure of the CPI, you can see that it was obviously abnormal for the first half of the year in Russia. It was higher. The CPI growth was higher than the traditional CPI growth in that same months of the different years. But starting from basically July, the month-to-month basis of the inflation came back to the more like normal territory, and this is one of the facts that probably made the central bank choose the lower steps for the key rate hikes. Next slide, please. The latest decision by the Russian central bank was to bring the key rate, the policy rate of the Central Bank of Russia, 0.25 percentage points higher than it was before. And our in-house expectations are that the tightening cycle is almost over for Russia. This is both because the up-to-date the statistics for the inflation, as I already said, becomes looking more and more normal for Russia, and the fact that the inflation expectations well, they are not muted, they are still high, but the dynamics became more like reasonable, more again, more normal, looking from the central bank point of view. But there are lots of ifs, obviously, because inflation is one of the biggest questions for the global economy as a whole, and we know that the global inflation affects Russian inflation and, well, the inflation of most of the countries around the world, and this influence became only higher for the latest 30 years. The inflation, as they say, as the researchers say, became more global, meaning that the correlations between the inflation in any given country became more the correlation with the global inflation became bigger. You can see that on this graph that we at the moment the key rate in Russia is already higher than the long-run neutral rate, neutral interest rate, meaning that the overall stance of the monetary policy is it's tightening, like happening at the moment. The big questions for the future monetary policy and the key rate dynamics is the global inflation surge permanent? Well, our expectation that yes, it is indeed permanent. It is not indeed permanent. It is temporary, meaning that there will be space for the easing towards the neutral rate estimate during the year to come. The inflation expectations in Russia, they are indeed sticky. This is what we know from the history of the Russian inflation, but we know that there are lots of measures of the inflation expectations, and some of them they provide new information for the Central Bank of Russia and for the researchers. And probably the conclusion from this analysis would be that they are becoming less and less sticky. And this means again that there will be some space for the easing in Russia. Yes, let's move to the next one, please. I want to say probably 2 words because my time is almost over. I will say only a couple of words about the exchange dynamics. The overall conclusion is that we're a little bit higher than the oil implied level of the exchange rate, but well, still we are close to the model to the, some would say, the fundamental level of the exchange rate, of the ruble exchange rate. And on this graph here you can see the correlation between the euro sol price on the horizontal axis and the exchange rate between the Russian ruble and the American dollar here. And you can see that starting from 2017 this correlation became, well, roughly 2 times less, the elasticity between those two. And this is the fundamental thing. This is coming from the both from the new shape of the fiscal rule of the Ministry of Finance of Russia and some other policy developments, which are here to stay with us. Yeah, thank you. And let's say in another maybe couple of words about the macrofinancial risks. Let's move to the final graph. I think that would be more informative here. No, I mean the graph. Yes, this one. Probably I should say that well, the recovery happens, as I have shown. Both the inflation and the economic activity are coming to their equilibrium shapes step by step, even though there are still risks for the new waves of the pandemic. Still, it's what we have at the moment in the Russian and in the global economy is, well, obviously a recovery, and it will be very difficult to stop this. There may be some unintended consequences of the expansionary monetary and fiscal policies around the world. There may be some financial risks to burst out from the even in the biggest economies. You may know that in China at the moment we have this a clash between the regulatory tightening and the expansion, which generates some tensions on the financial market of China. And this Evergrande situation is again this interesting and very well this situation is very interesting from the point of view of the forecast of the Chinese economy and the global economy as a whole. For the local risks, for the local macrofinancial risks, we have our own indicator, which is called the macrofinancial stress index. And on this graph, you can see its dynamics. Well, basically, this index is a coincident index of the macrofinancial risks. It draws a simple quantitative measure for the financial sector as a whole. It is meant to indirectly warn about the increase or the decrease likelihood of the rapid changes in the creditworthiness of the economic agents. It shows the systemic risks rather than the risks of the particular companies. And you can see that at the moment, this index shows that there is no liquidity issue in the macroeconomic in the macro financial sense in Russia, but we still keep analyzing all the stress scenarios coming from both from outside and from inside, and we'll be publishing some papers on that. I invite you to read them and to discuss them with us. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. I just would like one more time to remain, please, to keep the microphone muted, because it's not too easy to me to always looking who from participant forget it. And as we have really we are on time. We're still on time. I would like to pass the floor to Maxim Pershin, to the expert of sovereign ratings groups of the Aqua rating agency. And Maxim will explain us the situation with the finance in the Russian region, which as the mainly important, as Mikhail mentioned it on the start. Maxim, please, I will.
Hello, it's nice to see so many participants in our conference call. My presentation is about the finances of Russian regions in 2021. Before we start discuss the situation in 2021, I would like to remind that last year was very difficult for Russian regions. On the one hand, restrictions caused by COVID and the fall of prices in commodity markets negatively affected tax and non-tax revenues of Russian regions. On the other hand, the expenses last year grew significantly. And despite an extraordinary support from federal budget, I should notice there that last year transfers from the federal budget grew by more than 50%, which is an absolute record. The total deficit of all Russian regions was also record high, more than 700 billion rubles. In this year, we see that Russian regions can operate in much more favorable conditions. At the moment, we have preliminary data for 8 months of this year, and according to this data, we see that revenues of Russian regions grow faster than the expenses, 17% versus 4%. This results in interim surplus in amount of more than 800 billion rubles, while a year ago we had an interim deficit in amount more than 100.5 billion rubles. The main contribution to the growth of total revenues is made by tax and non-tax revenues, or so-called own revenues. Own revenues in this year grow with a rate of 24%. The transfers of from the federal budget declined by 2%. But we keep in mind that last year transfers were record high, and this in such small decline can be treated in another way by us than very favorable for Russian regions. In the next slide, we can see data and graph excluding Moscow. Moscow budget is quite big, and tendencies and data in Moscow can differ significantly from tendencies common for other regions, and that's why we usually try to exclude Moscow from our analysis. But in this year, we see that the tendency remains unchanged. The growth rate of revenues and expenses are practically the same as we saw in the previous slide. When we talk about regions who execute their budget with deficit, there are certain such regions. 72 regions execute their budget with interim surplus. The biggest surpluses are in Moscow, more than 100 billion rubles, and St. Petersburg, more than 70 billion rubles. There also is a number of regions with big metallurgy sector in their GRP, and these regions also experience very good surpluses relative to their tax and non-tax revenues. Next slide, please. In this slide, we can see that the recovery of regions' own revenues already in the end of last year. In the beginning of this year, own revenues were on the same levels as a year ago and 2 years ago. But since March 2020, we see a significant growth of own revenues, and own revenues in 2021 exceeded not only levels of last year, but also were higher than before COVID levels of 2019. The growth is explained by the number of factors. But the main factor in our analysis is corporate income tax. According to our analysis, corporate income tax. The growth of corporate income tax revenues we explain from one side by recovering of Russian economy, as Dmitry said before, and easing of restrictions caused by COVID. And the other reason of such significant growth of corporate income is very favorable conjuncture in commodity markets. We see that oil prices practically returned to before COVID levels, and prices for some other resources like metals, we will return to this later on the next slide, I suppose, even higher than before COVID. I think that we can go to the next slide. Yes, and here we see that on the five slide, thank you. On this slide, we see that the greatest growth was in regions with large metallurgy sector. The biggest gain from growth of metal prices was received by regions with high metal production share in GRP. For example, Lipetsk region, Vologda region, this region has huge metal plants, NLMK and Severstal, and the growth of steel prices, first of all, allowed these regions to receive significant gains. Regions with big ore mining sector in the GRP received a lesser gain, but however, the growth was also significant. For example, Belgorod region, Kursk region, other regions, for example, Novgorod Krai, Perm Krai, also received a good gain due to growth of other commodities prices, mainly linked with different versatile resources. I think that we can go to the next slide. In this slide, we see that the revenue plans remain conservative despite significant growth of own revenues. Revenue plans have been increased by Russian regions moderately, only by 6%. I should say that it is a common approach for Russian regions, and even not only for Russian regions, but also for federal government. Usually the budget is made with significant deficit, and additional revenues allows Russian regions to reduce actual deficit, and it is not too good for budget stability to rely so heavily on commodity market conjuncture. And in times when the prices are higher, Russian government and Russian regions try to accumulate extraordinary revenues to use them in times when the prices in commodity markets falls. This year also can be another reason for such conservative planning. No one can exclude a risk of possible next COVID wave, and this also can negatively affect revenues in perspective. In the next slide, we see that our basic scenario doesn't diverge from region's current forecast. In optimistic scenario, we suppose that Russia's revenues can overshoot the 2020 level by 15%. This number is less than an actual growth of revenues that we saw in the first slide. It is mainly explained with the fact that last year some tax payments that should be paid in second and third quarters of last year were actually paid in fourth quarter due to different deferrals of tax payments provided by government to support businesses. This year, we don't see such deferrals, and in fourth quarter, the growth of revenues can be less than in the previous quarters. And I think that we can go to our last slide. Alongside this growth of own revenues, there are other factors that can let us to suppose that this year is very favorable for Russian regions. As I mentioned before, transfers from federal budgets are as high as were in 2020. We expected at the beginning of the year that the transfers will be higher than in 2019, but will be significantly lower than in last year. At the moment, our assumption doesn't hold. Except of maintaining transfers on high level, there are additional measures provided by the federal government. Mainly, these measures are proposed to ease debt burden for Russian regions. At first, the government restructured budget loans lended to Russian regions in December 2020 for a term of 7 months. The total amount of such credits was 200 billion rubles. After restructuring, the terms of maturity of repayment of these loans was changed, and now they should be repaid not in bullet in July of this year, but gradually until 2029, and annual payment will not exceed 10% of loan amount. The second measure is to provide to lend additional budget loans in amount of 335 billion rubles to Russian regions to substitute commercial debt. The loans will provide to the regions whose commercial debt burden is higher than 25% of tax and non-tax revenues. As a result, a quarter of commercial debt will be substituted with long-term budget credits. A share of commercial debt of all regions will fall to 10% of tax and non-tax revenues. And the last measure is to provide additional infrastructure budget credits. We think that the start of this program will be until the end of this year. It will last for 2 years, 22 and 23 years. Total amount as declared of this program will be 500 billion rubles, and the loans will be provided for a very long term. All these measures, debt operation, maintaining of transfers at high level, alongside with growth of own revenues, let us suppose that this year, that in this year the regions will be able to take a breath after difficult last year, and I hope that they can make that they can pass from anti-crisis budget to the budget of development next year, and the program of infrastructure credits will also contribute to this goal. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Maxim. It's very interesting. You was mentioned the next wave of COVID, and I think that's how to say, it's one of the most important questions, which is still on top of all the world economy, actually. And we will pass to the next subject.
Oleg, I have one question to Maxim, if possible.
Yes, please, Dmitry.
Maxim, just
it
one.
Was normally at the end, but okay, if it's a short question, please.
Yes, short question, just for clarification. In your presentation, transfers, what does it mean? Support from government or what?
Support from government, it is gratuitous payments from government that should not demand repayment and any interest burden.
Okay, clear.
Okay. Thank you, Dmitry, Maxim. And I will pass the floor to Larissa Laznova. Larissa is a managing director, head of the international practice of non-financial company ratings. And Larissa today will talk to us about the Russian bond markets. And I think it's especially interesting because yesterday Bloomberg published the article which said that the Russian stock markets, it's really at the record and it's increasing day by day. I pass the floor to Larissa, please.
Good morning, everyone. I have to apologize for not using camera, as I believe my internet connection probably cannot handle both audio and video, so I don't want to take chances. Therefore, just stick with the audio. Can I have my presentation, please?
Yes.
Basically, in my presentation, I will explain the opportunities that Russian bond market or other business areas can provide to foreign companies, and how a rating agency, Aqua in particular, can facilitate those needs. First of all, a little bit of history. So our industry in Russia was established in 2015 by the federal law and is regulated by the Central Bank of Russia. The purpose of our, industry is to assign ratings to Russian issuers and to their domestic debt obligations. Presently, only 2 rating agencies are included in the regulations, meaning that only the ratings assigned by those 2 agencies can be used by investors to buy or sell securities, by the banks, or to use these securities to pledge or to enter into repo transaction with the central bank. So basically, how the agencies work in this environment, we use the local scale ratings and measure clients' creditworthiness against the sovereign, meaning Russian Federation, which has this AAA rating. So in order to do our work, we develop methodologies that basically rank local companies against each other on a certain scale, meaning that these particular ratings and these methodologies can be applied only to local companies or to companies with the majority of their revenue or profit being generated on the Russian market. That's why it has certain limitations. Can we move to the next slide, please? However, in recent years, we saw various developments. First of all, Russian bond market is developing, and it kind of becomes attractive to various foreign issues, like the countries or the issues from countries like former Soviet Union. They see this price differential between what kind of pricing they can get at the local market and the pricing they can get on the Russian market. Second, we see some demand for ruble financing for Russian operations of foreign companies. Sometimes in various instances, they need to finance something, and therefore they can go to a local bond market. Also, what we observed in the past 2 years in large infrastructure projects or just large contracts, various EPC contractors are similar, so it can be demanded for them to have a credit ratings. Or for instance, just recently we saw this new development that for various tenders where this large government related or private companies participated also, the request was for participants to have a credit ratings. Therefore, it's created kind of this new market for the rating agencies to expand with their services. So how we as Aqua address those issues? First of all, as I said on the slide before, this local scale rating cannot be applied to foreign countries, those who do not generate revenue on the local market, because it just developed only for those who on the Russian market. Therefore, 2 years ago, we decided to develop this global scale methodology that we successfully developed and published last year. So it has the main body that explains the concept, and it has also 16 separate industry methodologies for, main industries that potentially the clients can be coming to us. And also we are in discussion with the central bank, asking them to amend the law and include Aqua's global scale ratings in regulation in addition to big 3 rating companies and global rating companies. Can we go to the next slide? So how it works presently. So for instance, if a foreign entity comes to us and wants to issue a local bond, it's usually they guarantee this bond. So we assign at presently a global rating to such a foreign entity. And in order to issue this local bond, they need to set up this Russian SPV. And after we assess bond documentation, we decide on the global scale whether this bond is pari passu with the rating of the issuing company, or whether it's low for various structural or contractual subordination. And after we establish this relationship, we map this global rating to a domestic one. So basically at the end, a bond receives this national scale rating. It's done via exercise that is called mapping. So for mapping, you need to have, even before mapping, first of all, for this global rating, you need to make sure that a rating assigned to a foreign company does not pierce its sovereign ceiling. So for this, our sovereign team has to assign a credit estimate or a rating to that particular country from where a client comes. And also through mapping, we use sovereign rating of the Russian Federation as a starting point, and assign this local rating via various tables that are published on our website. There are certain kind of ambiguity in this procedure, and this is basically why we ask the central bank to amend the regulation and kind of to allow us not to do all these mappings, etc., but to use our global ratings directly. Nevertheless, even the current procedure works okay, and we already had various clients that use this kind of opportunity to issue their domestic bonds. So that's basically all what I wanted to explain to you. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Larissa, to explaining all this. I hope that this information will be useful for our for our participant on the Russian bond markets in the future. And I would like now to pass also the floor to Vladimir Gorchakov, to the Deputy Director, Sustainable Development Risk and Assessments Group of Aqua Rating Agency, to talk to us about the prospects of greening Russian economy. We know that in Europe, it's became mandatory already, and Russia are looking for Europe, for United States, for other countries. And I with pleasure pass the floor to Vladimir. Vladimir, you have to unmute your microphone. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Oleg. Thank you very much, colleagues. I hope you can hear me well. Could you open my presentation, please? Just a second.
Just 1 second, because I do it one by one.
Okay.
It will be there in just a few seconds. Please.
So thank you very much. My name is Vladimir Gorchakov, Sustainable Risk Assessment Group of Analytical Credit Rating Agency. So the next slide, please. So basically, it's a very hot topic now everywhere, especially in Russia. And before starting how they're greening the global actual economy, not only the Russian economy, we need to look at the Russia's GDP structure and Russia's export structure. So while if you look at GDP, the official statistic, surprisingly, the Russian economy is actually diversified, more diverse as it was before. But while when you look at the export structure, you see that more than half of the product, it's mineral products and in addition metals. And only part of this is food, machinery, and chemicals. So the next slide, please. So saying that, we need to look at the global trends affecting the Russian economy. First of all, so we are representing here the financial infrastructure company. We need to look at the financial markets. So the number of United Nations Principles for Responsible Investor signatories, more than 3.7 trillions already. This is assets under management of this company, and which means that all of these companies on the graph you see on the right side have to implement ESG principles in their investment decision and investment strategy. Also, we see the increasing number of commercial and development banks, especially with exclusion list. One of the part of this exclusion list is the rules not to finance the coal and even oil and gas already. Then we have the global initiative on the government level, which is net zero commitments. So as of mid of this year, almost 140 countries have committed to carbon neutrality to some dates, like European Union 2050 and 2065 for China, for example. And one of the most important thing, in my view, is the European Green Deal signed in 2019 and carbon border adjustment mechanism, so-called CBAM. So this will start affecting the Russian economy already starting from 2026. So the next slide, please. So on the left side, you can see the EU energy mix evolution according to the European Commission forecast. So you see that the coal, which is still large part of the energy mix in the European Union, is going to shrink to almost zero by 2050, and the same for natural gas and oil. While the renewable source of energy, bioenergy, and other source of energy like hydrogen will increase substantially. And on the right side, you see the share of export affected by CBAM, this calculated by the IFM institution. So you see that according to estimates, if you look at the exports, from different countries outside the EU, Russia will be the most affected. So more than 12% of Russian export will be affected by the current proposal included in the CBAM, which is mostly chemicals, metals, and energy. So saying this, the next slide, please. We would like to focus on the some solutions. And you know that recently the Russian government initiated the process of decarbonization strategy of the Russian economy. And part of these initiatives is the supporting the green bond market in Russia, so the national green bond market. So far, we are very small market. It's less than 1% of total almost 1 trillion of global green bonds market, and according to WebRF, which is the methodological center of the green finance in Russia, we can have the annual issuance of around 300 billions of rubles. However, we see that this needs some support, not only methodological, but also financial support from the federal government as well. So the next slide, please. One of the most important part of the European Green Deal was the Ukraine Taxonomy, which is basically the list of the potential projects and the sub-industries which support the climate change mitigation and climate change adaptation. So this is the national document for the European Union, which separate the green industries and projects from another one. And one of the main purposes of these documents is to define the industries which should be financed through the green financial instruments, and financial markets should have a support for these projects and industries. The next slide, please. And globally, all over the world, different economies, different countries support their own taxonomies, like Chinese green financial instruments catalog, the taxonomy in different post-Soviet countries like Kazakhstan, Georgia, and in Russia we have our own taxonomy almost signed. So we hope that this will be as a federal document by end of this month. And this document was created by WebRF and discussed with many participants of the Russian financial, non-financial market, and defining the key areas for the support of green projects, starting from waste management and recycling to agriculture, transport, water supply, and wastewater disposal, as well as energy. The next slide, please. So saying that, I would like to briefly focus on the our services. So what we are doing as a rating agency, we're doing the corporate ESG assessment, which is solicited, and I will show you an example of this assessment. And as well as we are doing the verification of green bonds and loans and social bonds and obligation, as well as sustainable development obligations. So we already issued the verification for several green bonds in Russia, which all support the debt, including decarbonization of Russian economy. For example, Sinara Transportation used the proceeds from these green bonds to finance their operating cost on the producing the more environmental friendly trains called Lastochka. The next slide, please. When we're doing our ESG assessment, we use both qualitative and quantitative indicators, we use the modifiers and analytical adjustment because this is very young market and the young product as well. So there are a lot of different approaches how to assess the ESG risks. And we focus so far on the mix of big data analysis, including our internal database, as well as qualitative assessment of the company. The next slide, please. So this is the core of our assessment. It's more than 8,000 companies, not only from Russia for sure, from more than 17 industries. On the right side, you see the basically the breakdown of the companies in the database by industry. You see that the mechanical engineering, real estate, and retail is one of the most represented industries and the companies in this database, and we're working on this database day by day because there are new companies coming, especially from the emerging markets like Russia, and we have to compare and adjust our assessment. The next slide, please. So to summarize, we are in the official list of the external reviews for MyX, WebRF, as well as ICMA. And why the Russian company, in our view, should focus on the green bonds, because saying that the Russian economy will be definitely affected by the European regulations, including CBAM, we see that there is a trend on the future decarbonization on Russian economy supported by the Russian government. And in order to finance all of these projects, the green bonds is one of the most transparent and normal mechanism to finance these products. The next slide, please. So, and as I discussed that recently we issued our first ESG assessment, assessment of the company Rosseti, which is the Russian grid corporation. The company was assessed at the level of ESG 3, which is a very high score for the ecology, social responsibility, and management, while we have the best score for the environmental part, and only score 4, which is middle part of our rating scale for the social and governance. One of the main reasons that Rosseti doesn't have a large part of the energy generation, so it's mostly energy transportation. That's why the values of the key quantitative pollution indicators is very low as compared to peers. But for example, we can see that so far such companies as Rosseti, they didn't focus so much on the climate risks, which is very important. We see day by day more and more companies implementing new strategies. And for the S part, actually, I would say that in general, large Russian corporations are quite good in the social metrics as compared to global peers, especially from the emerging markets, and in the governance part as well. So saying that, so the next slide, please. I would like to say thank you for your attention. I see that we are a little bit lack of time, and we'll be happy to answer your question.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Vladimir, and especially about the green bonds, the good news that a few weeks ago, for example, the Moscow City green bonds start to be listed on the Luxembourg exchange, and that's already one of the good steps, I think, in this direction. I would like to also mention to our participants, especially our members, that we have under the Chamber of Commerce, we have an expert center about the ESG compliance, especially for a company located in Russia, which plans, for example, to export in the future to the European Union or abroad everywhere. We have our expert Natalia Ponomaryova, who is in contact with WebRF, working with the Russian Central Bank special groups about especially the ESG compliance in Russia. I would like to say again, thank you very much to Vladimir, Larisa, Maxim, Dmitry, and Mikhail for this really, how to say, very informative but short presentation. We are really now in 1 hour time, has four very good speakers, and as in the invitation is what mentioned, that today it's not only the webinar, classical webinar, but it's also the round table. You are invited, all of you invited, if you have a question, to unmute your microphone and please give your question to our speaker. There is unmuted. I think it was a very clear enough. If we have no question coming from our participant today, then I would like to thank all of you to be with us today. We was really on time, and again, thank you very much to the Aqua rating agency. I would like that we repeat this kind of conference, maybe beginning of the 2022, to see how the autumn was and what will be with us after this, I don't know, new wave or no new wave, or good weather everywhere. Wish you a very good and productive Tuesday. Thank you very much, colleagues. Philippe, you handed your hand. It's just to say, okay, thank you very much, all of you, and see you in the future. Tomorrow we will have one also webinar on the Russian language about the European GDPR policy, especially concerning, again, Russian company looking for export or to sell products to European Union. It's concerned especially the fact that each company which has contact with the European customer by website or by other ways, if they collect some data of European customer, they have to be in compliance with European law, because the law is extraterritorial, if I am correctly said. And tomorrow morning we will have this this webinar with the Belgian expert, but okay, former Russian citizen to the Belgian expert, Irina Klokova, who was working for many Russian companies, for many Belgian companies, and today she is a specialist in GDPR questions. Please just send me back your request if you will wish to participate. Thank you very much again to all of you, and see you, hope, very soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, colleague.